Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know the beautiful views from the Alaska Frontier Highway causes many drivers to go off the road? Come with us as we wind our way along the 127-mile stretch of road and explore the history of the Alcan Highway.
Today, we're taking a bit of a road trip, diving into one of the most, just astonishing construction stories of the 20th century.
We're talking about the Alaska Frontier Highway.
Exactly. Though most people know it as the Alcan Highway.
Right.
And our sources detail this feat of engineering that, honestly, it sounds physically impossible, a nearly 1,500-mile road.
Punched right through the subarctic wilderness.
And officially completed in just 9 months. So our mission today is pretty simple. Uncover the political urgency, the logistical madness, and the surprising compromises that let this happen.
That timeline is what really sets this apart. I mean, construction starts in March 1942. And they're cutting the ribbon on November 20th of the same year. That tells you everything you need to know about the urgency. This wasn't careful planning. It was a scramble.
It was a full-blown panic.
A geopolitical panic, absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the idea itself, connecting the continental U.S. to Alaska, that wasn't new. It wasn't some idea they cooked up overnight.
Oh, far from it. The dream of a good overland route. That goes all the way back to the 1890s.
The Yukon Gold Rush.
Exactly. You had prospectors heading to the Yukon and Alaska, and they desperately needed a reliable way to get there.
So the idea was already there.
It was. In fact, the Alaska Territorial Legislature had been formally studying routes since the 1930s. They even commissioned surveys. It was, a project just waiting in the wings for a disaster.
And that disaster came on December 7th, 1941.
Pearl Harbor.
That's the catalyst. And this is where it gets really critical because that one event just forced the U.S. and Canadian governments to stop debating and start moving mountains, literally. Why was Alaska suddenly so vulnerable?
Because all the supply lines, which had always been by sea, were now completely exposed to Japanese attack.
The entire Pacific was a war zone.
Right. So Alaska needed reinforcements, men, materials, you name it, and you just couldn't rely on ships anymore. The Alcan Highway became the immediate, non-negotiable answer. A secure overland artery.
An artery straight from the lower 48 through Canada and into the territory. And that urgency, it didn't just hit Washington and Ottawa. It had this immediate and just crushing impact on the tiny town they picked as the starting point.
Dawson Creek, British Columbia.
That's where it all begins.
And the logistical shock there is. It's almost unbelievable. You have to picture Dawson Creek before this.
Yeah.
It's a community of maybe 600 people, a handful of stores, a couple of small hotels. That's it.
And then on March 9th, 1942, the American forces start to pour in.
Pour in is the right word. In a matter of weeks, the population of this tiny outpost, it swells by 10,000.
10,000 American troops.
Yeah.
Just dropped into a town of 600.
Can you imagine? I mean, think about the pure logistics. Just housing and feeding them before they've even seen the first mile of wilderness.
And it wasn't just troops. It was all the equipment.
Thousands of tons of it. Bulldozers, graders, trucks, all converging on this single, completely unprepared railhead. The movement of men and material alone was a miracle of coordination.
And it basically happened overnight.
It did. The military knew this wasn't just building a road. It was like a military offensive against nature itself.
And the scale of what they tried to build in just 3 seasons is just staggering. We know the route was almost 1,500 miles, but the real complexity, that was hidden. It was the infrastructure needed to make the road, stay put.
Exactly. The 1,500 miles, that's just point A to point B. What's underneath that route is the real story. The sources highlight this massive effort. 133 major bridges.
133. And over 8,000 culverts.
8,000.
For anyone listening who isn't sure, a culvert is basically a drain, a tunnel under the road to let water pass through. That number, it just illustrates the sheer amount of water they were dealing with.
It speaks to constant runoff, swamps, you name it. But beyond the water, you have to look at the ground itself. Because that's where the engineering deep dive really begins.
Right.
The cost was about $140 million, which was a huge sum then.
A fortune.
But the real price was paid in human labor.
And that human effort was immense.
Yeah.
We're talking 7 regiments of American engineers. That's about 11,000 troops.
Right, working alongside 16,000 civilians.
From both Canada and the U.S. So you have 27,000 people focused on this one dirt path in the middle of nowhere.
And those men were walking into conditions that the source material literally calls the most extreme imaginable. This was not a scenic job.
We actually have access to the direct warnings given to the recruits, and they are grim. It's just a picture of nonstop environmental assault.
Let's start with the temperature.
Yeah, the temperature swing is just, it's almost paralyzing to hear the numbers. They were told to expect to work in anything from 90 degrees above zero
So a hot summer day.
to a lethal 70 degrees below zero in the winter.
That is a 160-degree swing. Just imagine trying to engineer anything in those conditions. The ground is freezing solid, then it's turning into this muddy quagmire. The work was explicitly defined as fighting swamps, rivers, ice, and cold.
And when the sources say swamps, we have to be specific here. In that latitude, they're not talking about shallow marshland. They were fighting something called muskeg.
Right, muskeg is the critical defining engineering problem of that whole region.
So what is it exactly?
It's essentially this deep, soggy peak, a mix of living and dead plants that can be feet and feet deep. You can't build a stable road on it. It's like building on a wet sponge.
And what makes it worse is what's underneath it.
Permafrost. Permanently frozen ground.
So the engineers come in, they clear the surface vegetation to lay down the roadbed. What happens to that permafrost?
They've just disturbed its insulation layer. The summer sun hits it, and it starts to thaw.
And the road just sinks.
It sinks, it warps, it becomes impassable. They were building on shifting ice that they were unintentionally melting themselves. So to meet that impossible 9-month deadline, they had to make a huge compromise.
They couldn't build a perfect permanent road?
Not a chance. The initial Alcan Highway was what they called a pioneer road.
A pioneer road.
Exactly. The goal was just rapid passage, get the trucks through. It was often laid right over the frozen ground, covered in gravel as fast as possible, just hoping the winter freeze would hold it together.
So it allowed for movement, but it was a mess.
A mess that needed constant, immediate maintenance. It was a trade-off. Speed for stability.
And on top of the cold, the swamp, the ground trying to swallow everything, the summer brought its own special kind of torture.
The sources warned recruits about the biological warfare from mosquitoes, flies, and gnats.
And they didn't just say they were annoying.
No, the sources specifically used the phrase bodily harm. We're talking about swarms so thick they'd choke the radiators on trucks.
Wow.
They could literally drive men mad. It says a lot that they had to warn military personnel about the bugs.
It paints this picture of just extreme isolation and unrelenting physical demand, and yet the operation held together.
That's the legacy the sources really emphasized. Despite the brutal conditions, the international workforce, it was seen as this great example of working together, a unity forged by necessity.
And that unity paid off. In 9 short months, the routes met.
The official opening ceremony was a huge geopolitical event, a massive relief.
Where did they hold it?
It was on November 20th, 1942, at mile marker 1061, a spot they dubbed Soldiers' Summit in the Yukon. You had officials, police, civilians from both nations there to celebrate. The supply line was finally open.
But like you said, this was a rushed pioneer road. It was built for war, not for long-term civilian comfort. So when did it start to become a proper highway?
Almost immediately, really. But the first big push was 4 years later, in '46. The Canadian Army took over, supervising a massive upgrade and reconstruction project.
So fixing all this temporary section.
All the parts that were now melting and washing out. Then eventually the Canadian government assumed full responsibility.
For the sections in its territory.
Yes, that was phased. For the Yukon section, the handover to their Department of Highways happened on April 1st, 1971. And really, the work has never stopped. There are still programs today to upgrade and modernize it.
It's never truly been a finished road.
Never.
It's amazing that a project born from such desperation has achieved this kind of recognition. The ultimate nod came pretty recently, didn't it?
That's right. September 28th, 1996. The Alaska Highway was designated the 16th International Historic Civil Engineering Landmark.
So it's up there with the Panama Canal, the Eiffel Tower.
It's in that league, acknowledged as one of the most significant infrastructure projects in the world.
So if we zoom out, what's its lasting significance today?
It's still that vital link. It connects the industrial centers of the U.S. and Canada with the natural resources of Alaska and the Yukon. But it represents more than just a road now. It's a symbol of this enduring, peaceful collaboration between the two nations that grew out of a shared crisis.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to take a quick tangent. Compare the Alkin, this monument to utility, to another famous Alaskan road our sources mention, the Seward Highway.
Ah, yes. The road from Anchorage down to Seward.
Right, about 127 miles. And it's famed for its beauty, but also for its danger, which is a really interesting counterpoint to the Alkin story.
It really is.
The Seward Highway is statistically one of the most dangerous roads in all of Alaska. And the reason for the accidents isn't bad construction or ice, although that doesn't help. It's the scenery.
It's the ultimate road safety irony, isn't it?
It is. The awe-inspiring views, the mountains, the glaciers. It is so compelling that it's notorious for distracting drivers.
Literally causing them to look away, swerve into the other lane, or even go right off the road.
So you have the Alkin, designed for pure wartime function, ignoring all aesthetics. And then the Seward Highway, which is dangerous because people can't stop looking at the view. It's a fascinating contrast.
Completely different purposes, completely different consequences.
So what does this all mean? We've looked at the Alkin Highway, a monument of military necessity, built on an impossible 9-month timeline, battling 160-degree temperature swings and thawing permafrost. That resilience, that speed, born from fear. It shaped the entire modern North American supply chain.
And what's so fascinating is how a project born purely of wartime desperation, this rapidly built, low-integrity road, became an enduring peacetime link that needed years of more collaboration to stabilize.
It completely transcended its original purpose.
It went from a strategic route to a symbol of engineering and cooperation.
Absolutely. And when you bring in that detail about the Seward Highway, the beautiful road that causes accidents just because it draws the human eye, it raises a really powerful final question for you, the listener, to mull over. Considering the Alkin was driven by utility and the Seward is cursed by its beauty, how does the initial focused purpose of a structure so often clash with the unintended consequences of human attention and distraction? The road built for absolute function versus the one made dangerous by its aesthetic pull. It's something to think about the next time you marvel at a historic structure.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org